welcome if you've just arrived. We'll just kick off in just a minute. Just wanted to do a quick audio and video check. Can you all hear me and see me okay and see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yes, okay.
Great, thank you. It's very quiet, so thank you for your etiquette with that. Perfect. Okay, we'll just, there's a couple of people just arriving, so we'll let them in and we'll kick off. Okay, so thank you for coming today in what is this second session that we as Readygrad have delivered. So this is number 2 of I think 5 that we'll be delivering. So hope you've enjoyed the series by Study New South Wales to start with, and we'll do a proper introduction in a minute. But if this is the first time we've met you, hello and welcome, and hopefully we can share some things today that are going to be really helpful for you moving forward. So providing all the technology looks like it's working fine, we'll make a start. So again, if you've just arrived, welcome, and I will keep an eye on the waiting room of people joining because it seems to be coming through now. Okay. So we're talking today about advanced job application strategies. My name is Rowan Holland. So I am obviously your facilitator for today and represent a company called Readygrad, but this program is obviously the Study New South Wales Employability Program. And again, this is a stage in that program. So again, if this is your first or you've attended a number before, then great, it's great to have you along, and we'll be getting into this quite quickly because we've got an hour together. So let's get moving. So just very quickly, as I said, my name's Rowan Holland. I lead a business called Readygrad. So we are solely involved in graduate employability. That's what we do as a business. My personal background is running graduate programs in corporate organisations, usually mid to large organisations. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today comes from that experience and expertise, but also our continual connections with organisations as well, about what they're doing, how they're employing, how they recruit, with the idea that we can independently give you all some helpful advice that will help you with your own journey. So with no further ado, let's get into this. So again, if you were in our session week before last, then we were talking about navigating the graduate employment journey. This is then the next stage about advanced job application strategies. So we're covering things about what you should be thinking about including in your job applications. We're going to be talking about cover letter and resume specifically, and then importantly about online applications, meaning any organisations that you may have applied to before or that you will come across in the future who have an applicant tracking system, a digital sort of online application form. It's about what are in those and how do we best navigate that process as well. So if we met you a couple of weeks ago, this may look familiar. The reason it looks familiar is we use this a lot to kind of really start unpacking the process. So if you're thinking about yourselves and your own sort of preparation for applying for job opportunities, and even before an interview or stages of a recruitment process, it's really important that you understand and are aware of the elements that an employer would recruit you. So what are the elements that an employer is interested in you and your skills and experience to enable selection through a process? So these are those things. So when, when an employer is looking at, measuring and assessing you based on skills and experience, a lot of times it comes down to things that are logically more broad than just your university grades. So things like volunteering, extracurricular experiences that you've had, any potential work experience, leadership opportunities, things like that, that really, we talk about a breadth of experience. So I really want you I'm just going to leave this slide on screen for a minute, and I just want you, as an individual, I want you to reflect on this and make some notes for yourself on what is it about your, whether it's a cover letter, resume, or a job application, what is it about you and your skills and experience that you're maybe not capturing to this point? So I'll just leave you with that for a minute or two. I've just seen that note that the sound is broken. Is anyone having sound problems? Can you all hear me okay? Okay, so thank you. So it may just be that particular student. If maybe if you can just look into those things, it may be at your end. Unfortunately, on something like a Zoom setup, things can happen with individual PCs. So anyway, so I'll leave this here for you. Just make yourself some notes. What is it that you're not capturing about yourself? What is it, that piece of work experience, that volunteering experience that maybe is not included? So I'll just give you 30 seconds or so to kind of think about that and just to make your own notes. Because it will all make more sense when we keep moving through this, because these are elements that an employer absolutely is interested in. So, and I'd encourage you beyond today to keep this sort of image in your mind. So always consider, what experiences am I getting and am I being exposed to that I could talk about in a job application, or that I could talk about in a certain part of the recruitment process. Okay, so we'll keep moving, but do keep, even if you want to take a photo of that, a screenshot of that particular screen, I think really worthwhile for you to continue to reflect on in future. Okay, so we're going to quickly move through what hints and tips around cover letter and resume. And this is not specifically just a cover letter resume workshop, because we're going to get into, also these online applications and sort of how and why employers measure them, because I think they're the parts that you don't often get exposure to. So we're going to definitely hit those topics. So as far as, and look, a lot of you, this might be a refresher for you. There's some obvious things in here, but based on the number of applications that I've seen in my experience, a lot of applicants still don't follow some simple rules around just making sure your spelling and grammar is correct, etc. So things like stating the right job and job title and company name, talking about your motivations, about why you think you're the best candidate, linking your experience. And we're going to actually go through a couple of scenarios today that will bring to life what we're talking about here. I think what we often forget to is what we've listed here is explaining how you fit into the company culture or values, and importantly, how you differentiate yourself. So I want you to think about yourselves in comparison to your friends, to people on this call. To an employer, you are a set of skills and experiences, and you need to get that across in a way that is compelling and importantly unique, so that an employer's got more reason to want to talk with you further. So again, always think about the areas that make you unique. So with a cover letter, there's obviously some structure to a cover letter, and we could probably have a workshop solely just on a cover letter, the cover letter topic only, but we're going to kind of touch on a few key things today. So greeting is important, the introduction, and I'm going to show you a basic format in a minute of what that could look like. job-specific information, because that's the important part about any cover letter or any job application, is how do your skills and experience relate to what is required by the organisation. As soon as you can link those two things, that's really the essence of what a successful cover letter looks like. So it's always important to keep that in mind, is how can you align yourselves to the things that are important to the organisation. You'd be surprised how often we see spelling and grammar, not done well. So the things that you can control are things like reviewing spelling, reviewing grammar. If you're English second language, which I know a lot of you would be on the call today, get a friend whose English is potentially better than yours and get them to review it for you. Just sometimes a second person to review and read over things is important. So there's some key things that we would definitely say are important. Without getting too prescriptive on, what I don't want you to do is copy a template like this exactly, but this is just, I think, a great example of really distilling down the key things that are important within a cover letter. Don't worry too much about the formatting up the top here, but what I really want to alert you to is, how the paragraphs would be differentiated. So what should be in an introduction, how you can talk about your skills and experiences. And I'm going to show you what that can kind of look like in, how do we look at a job advertisement, and how do we then try and relate our skills and experience to that. So we're going to do that and really focus on what we're looking at here, which is paragraph 3. But that would be, in a look and feel, that would be what a cover letter should sort of look like or feel like. So are there any questions at this point about that? Because I know that I think that the other thing I'd say just before we have any questions is there's no perfect template for a cover letter. It needs to be well set out, well organised, spelling and grammar and formatting. But there's obviously not a perfect way to do a letter. There'll be a number of different ways that you can do it. The important thing is getting those simple things right, making sure it's simple. So good question, and do speak up turn your mic on if you want to speak. I'd rather hear you, but you can drop it in chat if you want to. Is how much of my personality should I show in the cover letter is a question. This is exactly the moment for your personality. So when you're talking about your skills and experiences, about how you've demonstrated these things, and that will bring your personality to life a little bit more. So think about this as a teaser or an introduction to yourself. The other thing is that how brief can it be? Look, if you're looking at what you're seeing on page here, if you've got, I think 5 paragraphs is potentially a little bit long. If you've got 3 or 4 solid paragraphs, if you look at it broken down about what you're seeing on screen here, it doesn't need to be long, and it absolutely doesn't need to be longer than a page to answer that question. Yes, someone's written there about 6 seconds to review a CV. That is, I have heard that as well. Interestingly, I would scan a cover letter as a recruiter, and I would then go straight to a resume or CV and really scan for what I'm looking for, which I'm going to cover in the CV section of today. So yes, you're right. It is quite quick, so you want to really get your key information in there. I'm going to give you some examples of this, by the way, to sort of show you what this looks like. So in the interest of keep moving, but good questions, keep those questions coming. I noticed there, if you don't know who it's addressed to, hiring manager is fine. To whom it may concern is also fine. Look, you're not going to be included or discounted on the basis of how you greet someone in the cover letter. So to whom it may concern, dear sir / madam, dear hiring manager, etc. If you don't know the name, then that's absolutely fine. Okay, so teamwork. What do we think about this? I'm a great team player. What do we think about that in a cover letter? Linking a skill to a job advertisement. Do we like that? Is that should we say things like that? Any thoughts on I'm a great team player? No, I don't like it, some people have said. And feel free to turn your mic on if you want to. I'd love to hear from you. So I'm here to tell you that it probably doesn't mean a whole lot if it's not linked to anything. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So what about that as an alternative? Yes, someone said relate with examples. Specific task, correct. So a couple of you have picked up on that. And I know this seems fairly obvious, but for the rest of us, don't be tempted to throw what I call is sort of empty skills. So don't throw out, I'm a great team player, I'm very organized. Those things don't make sense unless they're linked to something. So be really careful about how you demonstrate it is really the value. So that second example is obviously a much stronger and more compelling to a recruiter or an employer than the first one would be, for obvious reasons. I want you just read that job. This is a real job advertisement that I've taken from a job board. I just want you to have a read of that for me. I know you won't all be engineering students, but that doesn't matter. And when you finish reading that, so this is a real extract of a real job ad. Who can tell me, just on reflection, who can tell me what you think the key elements that you could link your skills to? What would be some key things in this? What's a key element in this advertisement that you think you could perfectly align, say, your own skills or experience with? Any ideas? So in other words, I want you just to highlight a phrase or a sentence or something that you think really pulls out. So learning new tasks, yes. Ambition, growth, mindset, drive. Yeah, have a look at the actual ad and look at the words that pop out to you. What are some things that make sense? So learning new tasks, absolutely.
Is it like you're highly motivated by your own development and growth? Yep,
absolutely. So a really good example, and thank you for sharing by by microphone. It's nice to hear from somebody. So yes, if that for you is something that really sticks out, is that if you are a highly motivated person and you're motivated by your own development, then there's a way that you can kind of address that in your cover letter. So absolutely. So yeah, a lot of you are raising different things. So here's the same job ad. These are some things that I picked out. So let's just say that let's just say this is a job that we were all applying for. These three things would be and they're not always, but they are three absolute examples of things that you could pull out and that you could address your own skills and experience with. So relationships and engagement is important. Learning new tasks, which someone mentioned, is important. Communication skills. So, they would be examples of you drag those out and you address those things within that paragraph 3 and 4 of your cover letter. Then that's exactly what an employer wants to know. Okay, so that's just an example of how that might play out. And look, I'd really encourage you all, go and find a job ad, go and find one on Seek or Grad Connection or wherever you sort of go looking for jobs and see job advertisements, and just practice, have a look at the text in there and say, how can I align my skills and experience to, relevant things in there? And there'll be some things that pop out to you for sure. I want to show you this other job advertisement. So just again, have a read of this. And again, I know you're not all engineering students, but that doesn't matter. It's an example. Okay, so again, just it's an example of a very simple job advertisement, as you can see. Again, now that we're so good at being able to pull things out, what can we see in there? For a lot of us on the call, it will be probably that to be an Australian citizen. This is an example of a government department job or a defence force job. So yeah, potentially eligibility is an issue, which, you know, is quite clear based on the advertisement. But I'm hoping that beyond today, when you start looking at jobs that you're applying for, that you can actually see things that are, you can see communication, you can see problem solving skills, and you can then align, your own skills and experience to those. So what I want you to do, based on sort of looking at that linking job advertisement, I call this Be the Recruiter. So what I've got is a few examples of real cover letters. So we've only just changed the names of these people, but I want to show you examples of, and this is just, they're not particularly good or particularly bad. They're just a cross section. So just have a look at that. I just want you all to have a read of that. And if you can, either by microphone or by chat, I want you to tell me what you think is good or not so good about this. Do we like it? Do we not like it? And again, just think about also the format, format and presentation of it. And I would love your thoughts on what we think. Do we like it or do we not, and why? Someone said it doesn't look that convincing. Maybe, yep. Tell me also why. Yeah, quite wordy. I'd agree with that. Potentially too long. I think particularly that big sort of second big paragraph, I think there's a lot in there. Yes, someone's picked out spelling mistakes. Can you tell me exactly where that is? Wrong choice of words, yep. So again, and this is on the basis that I know that all of you are not recruiters or HR professionals, right? But you've all picked that up. So what I want you to show you this is maybe what to do and what not to do. What does it look like from the other side? A bit repetitive, yes, I'd agree with that. Doesn't say passion, yep, I'd agree with that too. It seems a bit impersonal at times. Okay, so I'm going to go to another example. What do we think about this one? There's something format structure wise that I want to pick up here. Introduction is great. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, someone's got that there. So bullet points in the cover letter. What do we think about bullet points in a cover letter? Do we like it? Not like it? Not the place? I would agree. I would agree with all of you who have said no. The point being is the cover letter is a place for you to talk about and communicate your, like someone said before, your personality and your linking of skills. There's so many bullet points in your CVs or resumes. We can go and look at that elsewhere. This is not a summary of your experience. Can I say that again? That your cover letter is not a summary, because if we wanted a summary of your experience, we would go straight to your CV for that. What this is picking a few things and linking those skills and experiences in a way that you can write about it in a written communication style, because it's also about how you write and your motivations and all of that kind of thing is really important. So I'm glad you picked that up, because I'm a big a big believer in no bullet points in a cover letter, because you go to the detail of those kind of things in your resume. We want to see how you write in your cover letter. Someone said not even 3 or 4. Look, if you absolutely feel like you had to, then okay, but I would always just steer clear of it. If we go back to what that structure looked like before, I'm applying to this role, I'm motivated by this and this and this, and then I feel like my skills and experience demonstrated by X, Y, Z, and then wrapping that up. That's how we write a cover letter. So don't be tempted to summarize your skills and experience in bullet points in a cover letter, would be my opinion. The caveat to all of this is I'm not here to tell you exactly how to write it, because there's, like I said, a bunch of different ways you can put it together. I'm saying this is not a preference, and it's commonly held as not a preference by recruiters. But yeah, I think there's some things about format and grammar and structure that you don't need to put in, 10 or 12 bullet points into a cover letter. We want to see how you write. So I agree. I think the first paragraph, the last couple of paragraphs or sentences are quite good, but why on earth would we summarize our skills and experience when our resume is attached? Would be the thing there. Here's the last one very quickly. Again, someone's gone to bullet points, but what do we think about that? Yeah, again, someone said CV like. I kind of scared you off bullet points now, I think, for some of you. See, again, and thank you for those comments. Again, what we're looking at here, experience in screening interviews, experience in e-recruitment systems, they're the kind of things that we can see from your CV. So what we'd rather say is, if you've got 2 years experience in HR, what were you actually doing and how does it link to the job? So, I've got extensive experience in interviewing candidates for jobs through my job as X at X organization, etc. Yeah. So, and again, yeah, the bolding, it's just, to me, it's a little bit messy, I would say, again, mainly because of the bullet points that are in the middle there. So we don't need to know you've got experience or exposure to a bunch of those different things. What we want to know is how you've demonstrated your experience, and we can pick up those other things elsewhere. Okay. Are there any questions about those? I just wanted to give you, I think it's good to share these because it gives you a flavour of, these are for roles that are obviously in the broader HR recruitment space. So you'd think that these people would almost know better. It just shows how spread quality can be with cover letters. Are there any questions? So any questions sort of in wrapping the cover letter side of things up? Is it good to bold specific words? I would suggest not. There's no point bolding words. Again, you probably leave that to your CV, which we'll cover in a second. So any questions or comments about that? Does it make sense? Look, by the way, these 3 examples I've shown you, they're not bad cover letters. They're definitely not on the extreme bad end of things. They're actually reasonably good, but I think, could they be better? Yes, absolutely. Just by following a couple of simple principles around brief and then demonstrated, and importantly, skills linked to experiences. Okay. I'll just quickly address a question. Some advertisements include selection criteria. Does it mean we should write selection criteria? Yeah, look, I'm not a specialist in selection criteria. It's usually a government-based role that you're talking about there. Usually the selection criteria can be a separate document. But yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in selection criteria. But again, it's the same thing. You've almost got specific things that you need to demonstrate your skills and experience against. So it'll be something like, demonstrated skills in, I don't know, MyOb accounting software. So you would then write about how you've got those skills, in a certain job at a certain time. So separate document would be my opinion on that. Kelly, so just quickly on resume, we're going to quickly cover the same types of things on resume or CVs. Again, very similar cover letters. Keep it really clear and simple. It's not a detailed version of your entire life, which some people think it is. As a graduate, I know some of you may have had a career in some way already. You might be studying a postgrad and you've got slightly more experience, etc. But for a standard sort of graduate level application, your resume should not be more than 2 pages long in any event. If you've got quite a bit of experience, I would be saying 3 pages maximum. So again, it's about condensing and providing the right type of information. And we're going to be covering online applications in a minute. So what should be in a resume structure? The key points here are, and again, this is not an exact science, but there's definitely some commonly held preferences that employers tend to like, and they are these kind of things. So, so imagine all your headings. I'm going to give you an example of a resume. I'm not going to give you a template because, again, I think everyone is a little bit different, and there's a bunch of different templates that will work for you. But what you need to keep in mind is what's easy for a recruiter's eye to follow, really well structured, really clear, common fonts, nothing that's going to distract you away from what you want to try and share. I'll just pick up on a couple of the questions. What should we include our hobbies and interests? Look, again, hobbies and interests I think are quite relevant because even as a single line in your resume or a section, it's really just to show that you've got interests outside of the work that you do or the study that you do. So is a publication useful? Probably yes. If in your industry, if that's, if research related content is really important to your job, then absolutely I would include it. And that might be an achievement, for example, and it might be part of your degree listed as an achievement potentially. So again, this is what's quite hard to do with cover letter resume workshops, is because everyone's got different skills and experiences, and therefore different questions usually. But for all of you, I would say as long as there's common kind of headings and structure that can kind of slot underneath, then if it's easy for a recruiter's eye to kind of follow where they can pick up key information, then that's what they want. Remember, it's an introduction for an interview. It's not a full bio of your whole life. So just kind of be careful with that, to not overly, not detailed in length, and just to condense things that maybe still give the key information, but don't sort of go on too long with things. Referees, I do want to cover. So that's a very good question about referees, and I'll address it in a second because I've got a bit of a tip for you on the referee side of things. It's a very common question. So yes, I'll address that. So here's just a bit of a visual of what is important. So I want you to all think about format and structure. I want you to think about quality of presentation, and I want you to think about content. In other words, what's the detail actually in the document. So with those 3 things together, always have those 3 things in mind. Someone said, a skills not included under employment bullets and summary. Yes, they can be. We'll talk about that. So I'm going to show you now again, I know this looks I just wanted to have it all on a page, just all on a screen actually, so you could see it. So these are absolutely 2 distinct pages that you can see left to right. So imagine that they're 2 A4 sheets in a document. I'll just put them together for the purpose of just talking you through something. Now, again, my opinion is I just think that this kind of structure is easy to follow. And I know someone said too much white space. But I've deliberately taken just names out here, but I would argue that I think there's probably not enough white space, would be my opinion. So as you can see here, the minute that things get too overly kind of, condensed together, and you've got too many words, it's quite hard to pick up key things. So obviously imagine that this would be populated. Personal attributes, I just want to address quickly. A lot of people say, shouldn't I include them in here? I don't think you can do it or you cannot do it. I don't think it really makes much of a difference. I just like that it's a summary of you, and it maybe gives an insight into your motivations and what you want to do. Will it be the difference between you getting a job and not? No, don't think so. So just be aware of that. Personal attributes, you could take or leave that. That wouldn't be mandatory. But as you can see, more what I wanted to show is not so much the content, but more the flow. So personal details, whether or not you include personal attributes. Education, employment history, extracurricular volunteer, interests, hobbies, referees. Does that make sense? That there's a logical flow to that as a recruiter, my eyes get drawn to, right, that's what they're studying. And again, this is only an example. Work history, what's the most recent work history? Oh, that's what they're doing now. That's what they've done before, or whatever it is. So I know that if I need to find out more about extracurricular, I can go to that section and see it. Interest, hobbies, I can see it. So does that make sense? And are there any questions about this before I address the referee part? Is it good to include URL of a LinkedIn profile? Absolutely, you can. Yep, I think it's a good thing to do. Yep. Volunteer experience as work experience. If you don't have lots of work experience, absolutely, I would include it, and just make it clear that it's potentially a voluntary position. Again, not everyone has lots of work experience, so it's then about just utilising what you do have. What if you'd suggest you have 10 years of experience with one organisation? I'm assuming in that one organisation you may have had multiple roles, so you would just show those multiple roles and leave it as one, as a total length of dates, and maybe just separate dates beside each role. Include online learning if we lack some professional experience. Look, you can have a training section, yeah, so sometimes and again, when you got an experienced resume, and some of you potentially are experienced in a work sense, that you might have under education, you might have qualifications or professional development, and you could include their training that you have done. So yes, absolutely. So for example, if you're a chartered accountant and you've done a chartered accountant qualification, then you would include that in a qualifications area. Yeah. Currently working late. So again, these are very individual questions, which is going to be hard for me to address to a group, but I would again go back to that first slide about what are the areas of your skills and experience, and start at that point and then start populating your CV. So hopefully that helps. That just gives you a flavour. Again, do you have to use this kind of template? Obviously not, but I just think what I wanted to show you is something like this where A, all the font is very similar. B, eye gets drawn to key sections and headings. That's what you want. You want to avoid anything that's going to be, fluid about your document. You need it to be very structured and clear. Should we avoid using the points using our cover letter in our resume? Absolutely. Your resume there should be no real crossover. So again, in your cover letter, it's more about, let's just take this example. See this E2O job here, HR administrator, temporary contract. These are actual skills, but it might be that there's a teamwork, the advertisement or the job that they're applying for, there's a teamwork related competency that they need to address. So you wouldn't have any of that here. What you would say in that is, I worked in this team at E2O where I was part of this team and I did this and we achieved this outcome, and it was, something like that. That's where the differences would be. So that it's rare that you would ever have absolute crossover other than references to a job or a company. or your academic learning, etc. So I'm hoping that gives you just a snapshot just of kind of more what to watch out for and what to maybe consider when you're looking into this. I do want to spend a bit of time covering online applications, and we might have a bit of time at the end to cover any broader questions. So if you've maybe got a specific question more broadly, then maybe hold on to that and we can address them at the end. I just wanted to share what we're talking about here is, what if there's a job and it's usually a graduate program or an internship program or something where they're expecting a volume of applications, where you're actually applying online, in other words, completing an online application form to apply in certain fields and drop down boxes and menus and things like that. So less about cover letter resume, more about prescriptive kind of responses to questions. So in these things, and what we're talking about here is commonly graduate programs. So if you're going to be applying to a graduate program at one of the big consulting firms or an engineering company or a bigger IT company or something like that, commonly they will have an online application form system, and it will cover these. So that's what I wanted to address as part of today. So commonly there's usually about four key areas that are being measured. One element is your academic achievement. So in other words, your GPA, so your current academic achievement. Sometimes it can be credit minimum, and it's just the higher the better. So how have you gone? What's your current academic achievement like? Then you've got work experience, and keep in mind these are commonly equal. So there's no weighting to be more about academic achievement and less about other things. Commonly it's 4 equal components. Work experience, whether it's related or unrelated to your degree. Extracurricular skills, again, what are you involved in, areas outside of your study or outside of your work, including volunteering and maybe student societies, etc. And then leadership, this is not always captured, but one thing that can be commonly captured is leadership. So by that meaning, are you a part-time team leader at your supermarket job? Are you a tutor at university? So those kind of things where you've got demonstrated leadership can also be quite helpful. So hopefully that makes sense. So, it's not so much what's in the form, but it's about what's being captured, what's being measured, I should say, in the application form itself, and how employers are measuring your responses. So if we took that, in that example that we just showed you, so someone just asked what's the average minimum credit are. So meaning, are you a credit average or above in your GPA? So in your academic achievement at university, are you tracking at a credit average or above? Because commonly that can be an eligibility criteria. Not always, but it can be. So GPA, your academic achievement, how does an employer look at it? Out of 5, it would be a score that's weighted out of 5, for example. What about a work experience that's related? So an internship, something like that, another score. What about unrelated work experience? So your part-time casual jobs, then leadership, then extracurricular, and maybe a written response as well. But I know I mentioned 4, but we've just separated the 2 work experience options here. I just want to give you an idea of how an employer would kind of measure these things now. So you put your details in, your responses to what they've asked you. So they'll ask you something like, what is your current GPA? And you'll say it's currently a credit average, it's a 68 or something like that, or 66 or whatever. Then that would be measured. That would be a score, let's say, out of 5 in this instance. So that's kind of how those are put together. So if we go to the next screen, I just want to show you how that actually looks. So we've got 2 made up people here. These aren't real people, but this person's got a distinction average. So they score a 4 out of 5. And this is all automated within these applicant tracking systems, by the way. So I don't want to go too deep today because A, we don't have time, but B, just to sort of understand the concept of these things that you input are weighted and measured by an employer and by their system. You might have one internship experience at KPMG. Let's say that that's what you've got. Not all of you will, but let's say this person does. It might be one experience in that related space. So that's a 2 out of 5. We'll score that. A unrelated work experience. That's your part-time or casual job. This person's got 12 to 24 months in a job that's not related to their degree. They score a 4 out of 5 for that. Leadership, 4 out of 5. Extracurricular, 5. So that person in an example out of 25 scored 19. Let's have a look at this one. You can see there, very different. Might be a pass, so that's a 2 out of 5. A bit more related work experience, so that scores more highly. More unrelated work experience, but no leadership exposure, and then some extracurricular. So that person, based on those scores, would be 14. So what does an employer do with that? If you imagine there's potentially thousands of applicants, then they would simply look at a top to bottom approach on a filter. So who scored really highly across all those areas and top to bottom, and then we know what we need to put through to the next stage. And if you're at our session a couple of weeks ago around navigating the graduate employment journey, we talked about the recruitment process. An example of what was in that is at application stage, how many are being shortlisted to next stage. This would be how they would do it. I know this is probably, if it's a bit foreign to you, it might be hard to grasp, but again, it's an example and a common theme of what employers do. It might not be exact, but are there any questions or clarification required for that? Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah?
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
How do they evaluate whether you're a 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, this is, I want to give you kind of the broad employer point of view, but from my experience and having done this process for more than one employer, the way, look, GPA is the easiest way to describe it, right? So let's say that out of 5, if it is out of 5, a pass, a fail would be potentially 0 or 1. A pass is 2, a credit is 3, a distinction is 4, a high distinction is 5. So you can see that it's just a scaled approach to the higher the better. Work experience, I mean, that's very good related work experience, and not all of us would have that, so it scores quite highly. It's almost as much as you could get. The unrelated, if you've got more than a couple of years of demonstrated casual or part-time work experience, then that's great, that's maximum. But if you've got none, that would be 0. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we'll keep moving. I know that's a bit to take in, and I wanted to kind of get to this last bit with you. And because we've got so many of you, and it's great, we've got a lot of you on the call today. I think we've got, when I look, nearly 100 of you, I think. So I was going to break you out into small groups, but I think in the interest of time, we might do this as a collective group today on Zoom. It might be easier. So I know there's a couple of questions. Maybe those last couple of questions, if you can just hold that thought for now, and we'll come back to that. Come back to those if we can get to that. So just when you look at that, this would be an example of what we call a free text response in an online application form. So again, with the company looking for, it's almost like a mini cover letter, right? It's how can you demonstrate that you're a suitable employee? How do you talk about that? How do you talk about yourself in that framing? So that's where you have a look at that. When I say 5 minutes, that was if we did a breakout room, but we won't. I just want you to individually reflect on that. And I've got a couple of examples of responses to that too. But for those that have read that, what do you think, without asking for a formal response, what should be in this? What should we be including in this? Experience, goal alignment, I think that is, yes. Motivation, yep. And again, the important thing is not just your motivation, but how does it link to the organisation? So something about, I bring these things, but they're relevant in this way, right? Not just about, because this is why have you applied? You haven't applied just to get a job, even though you might have. What they want to hear from you is you've applied to this because something about the organisation that fits for you, yeah? How do you fit within the organisation? Why am I bringing to the company? Yes, correct. So I just want to show you these examples. So these are actual real responses to that question. What do we think about that? What's good or bad about that? Too general, too broad, and very, very brief, ultra brief. You've probably got an unlimited character limit on this. You could probably write up to, I don't know, 100 words for it or something like that. I think you've got opportunity. This is a perfect case way to showcase your experience or your motivations. What about this one? Pretty good. You're pretty tough critics, all of you, aren't you? Wordy. Links self to company. I'd agree with that to a point. Definitely links to company. I think it's pretty good. Don't think there's a lot wrong with that, relatively. No value for the company's actions to society. I don't think I totally understand what that means, but I think if you're referring to how they link to what's important to the organisation, then yeah, maybe a bit more in that. Yeah, that's a good pickup about employee oriented. It's about kind of what I can get out of it more so than the other way, rather than a balance. So what about this one? And someone's related this to a particular company. This wasn't an application for Westpac, but I suppose take that into account. Yeah, why do we think that last one's good? Yep, I think we agree that probably the last one. Look, the second one isn't bad either, with a bit of improvement. The last one's pretty good, right? I think we'd say that's quite solid, that you feel like you know that person much better by reading that. And that's kind of how you got to think like an employer, like a recruiter. Yeah, could they potentially align more to the values of, say, in this case, Westpac? Maybe. But I think it really does demonstrate much more about their own personal style, their own motivations, etc. So would you all agree that number 3, we feel like we know them far better than we know number 1, don't we? So just keep that in mind. It's really important to not be too brief, but then when you do talk about something, make it quite, concise, articulate, try and be as clear as you can about, why this is who I am and this is why I think I'd be valuable, etc. So any questions about that? Be happy to know we're coming towards the end of this. Someone said, is this available later? This is being recorded by Study New South Wales. So I can say that, but yeah, when that would be available, I'm not too sure. I just wanted to finally, and we might have a time for a quick question or two after this, but I just wanted to sort of close off with, again, we shared something similar a couple of weeks ago with what we call navigating the graduate employment journey. Is okay, when we peel all that back, we want to search for jobs, we want to find jobs that suit us. How can we get strategic about our job search? These are some things we shared recently. I'd share them again today. Just remember, get active on LinkedIn. and other professional social media channels, doesn't need to be just LinkedIn, but, be active digitally is the point, and professionally. Events, whether they're degree related, membership type events or conferences or whatever. Target companies, whether they're local companies, regional companies, small to medium, large. Find an angle that suits and go for it. Approach a casual employer is another great tip. And internships are highly valuable as well to employers. That experience is really valuable. So, okay, so that was kind of just to round things off. we can maybe address a question or two. We've got a few minutes left. So as you can see, we covered that. I'll leave that page on screen and go for it with some questions. So, is unrelated work experience score taken seriously by recruiters? Absolutely it is. And the reason that unrelated experience is asked for is commonly, not a lot of you would have related work experience or haven't had the opportunity to gain related work experience. So always keep in mind that in the event that you don't have related work experience, the next best thing is to demonstrate casual, because you can develop a whole bunch of skills that an employer would be interested in. So absolutely, yes. How do we learn from our previous rejections to increase the success rate? Yeah, the key point there is ask for feedback. If you can get feedback, you won't always be able to, but if you can get it, then I would absolutely say ask for where you've fallen over in the recruitment process. If that's at interview, if that's at psychometric testing stage, if it's at application stage, see what feedback you can get and see what you can do differently to make that better. Can we add self-learnt skills or informal trainings in the resume? Yeah, look, I think presented in the right way, you absolutely can. And again, anything that broadens or shows breadth to skills is important. So I think there's a question, someone with their hand up. Would you like to ask a question? Is it Rhythm?
Hi, actually I have a question.
Yep.
The thing is, how valuable would be the offshore internships or offshore job like experiences? Can you tell me about it a little bit?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a common one. So the way that I would answer that would be, again, on the basis of obviously Australian experience is great if you're aiming, for an Australian job. Nothing can kind of beat that in a work experience sense. However, if you don't have that, and even if you do have some local experience, your experience from back home or internationally would always be valuable to mention. So while it might not be the focus, it's absolutely worth mentioning. And again, for transferable skills, for the ability to have worked in an organisation with, with structure, with teams, with cross-generational teams, all of those things are highly important. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that.
It's okay. Maybe one last question here. What do we do if our applications are not getting noticed? And how do we specifically look out for desired jobs when they're mostly not marketed outside? That, if I could just suggest going back to that last screen that I showed, which is about, direct approaches to events where you can network, to be active on something like LinkedIn. So where you can create connections and discussions and potentially meetings with people, that you can get some kind of valuable work experience and create a relationship, that's absolutely better. Because you're right, the minute you apply for a job with thousands of others, the competition just goes way up. So not saying don't ever do that, but those other approaches we talked about are absolutely some other things you can do. So I'm hoping that a few of you got your questions answered. I'm hoping that the content was hit the mark today. So I just wanted to say thank you. We do need to wrap it up there, but really appreciate being with you. Love sharing this information, and just wanted to wish you all the very best with your job search, and just keep these hints and tips in mind. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the information.
Okay, sure. See you all soon.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye.